just creating a postcard watercolour using atmospheric effects. So firstly I'll tape it down to create a little bit of border. You can get the low tack tape from any hardware shop. There's also a clear one if you don't want a blue one. I kind of like the clear one because it's, you can see where it is. And this is quite inexpensive to buy, it goes a long way. Okay, so you're also sort of semi-stretching it like you would stretch a canvas so that it's preventing it from buckling. It has something underneath as well. Just take it in by about 2 or 3 little centimetres. I'm not, you know, perfect. If you want to mark it out, you can, but I'm not precious with it. Just to have a little bit of fun. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to work basically from my imagination and some of the things that I have around me, just to see what happens. So firstly you have to wet your page or your postcard. I call them postcards because I use them as postcards. Okay, quite liberal. Has to be clean water, so make sure you have 2 jars, one that's clean water and one that's for washing your brushes out. So you have that. You can see that it's quite wet, and when you tilt it you can actually see that it's quite shiny in there as well. Then I've just mixed up indigo blue, Paynes grey and ultramarine just to add a little bit of brightness. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to load up my brush, really let it You have to work pretty fast with this because the paper starts to dry, and once the paper dries you can't move the pigment around. Okay, so I'm just going to put a bit more. You might want to just tilt it so that it runs up and down. This paper is actually quite interesting because it's got a really lovely texture to it. You can see almost a weave through it. Okay, and then you might decide, okay, I think that colour's quite nice. And just dry it off a little bit. It does lighten up quite a lot when it dries and it starts to change. It is losing a lot of its detail with the weave, and it's creating some interesting effects. Sometimes you will get some watermarks left on it, but sometimes you want them and sometimes you don't. They create interesting effects. You can weave it around like so. So it's a little bit of a frame within a frame there, which looks quite interesting. I would wait for that to dry a little bit, maybe a bit more. Use a dome brush, wet it, always wet, always paint wet on wet. Okay, pretend that's where my mountain range is. I enjoyed Europe and the Scandinavian countries and just spent many hours on the train, gazing out the window, looking at all sorts of interesting landscapes. So I might actually load up a little bit of I've already got a little bit of a landscape happening there, and I might not want to do too much to that. And that was just moving the pigment around. I didn't anticipate that. I thought I had to put a bit more colour into it. But since I've wet it, I might give it a go. We've got something happening here, and put a little bit of darkness in there. this creates a touch more depth by having this mountain range in the front. So it's basically just playing with water. You don't have a lot of pigment. It's an inexpensive way of doing painting. You don't go through a lot of paint at all. This plate I could do up to 10 little paintings, if not more, just using the amount of paint that I have on this plate. You can use a tile if you want, or you can even buy tiny little ceramic dishes that you can put different colours in if you don't want to mix it. I sort of like mixing it. So try not to mix up your brushes, it's sometimes difficult. So you might decide, I'm going to paint some water in here. I've got a little bit of a watermark. I'm going to try and make use of that. See what happens with it. Okay. I like the way that edge has happened, it's quite sweet. And load up my brush with quite a lot of pigment and just dab it in. Probably wondering, why do I want to make this darker? Because it is in the foreground and I want the eye to travel. So from the foreground, that's almost like a silhouette, to the background, that's just a very faint line in the mountain range. And the trick with this is not to fiddle too much with it. The more you fiddle with it, the more mistakes you make, and then it starts to look a little bit patchy. So sometimes it takes me 10 goes to get it right, and other times I get it right pretty much quickly. Okay, I should be leaving it, and this is called fiddling, which I shouldn't be doing. Okay, so maybe put a little bit more colour in here now that it's drying. As you see, as the paint starts to dry and the water, it doesn't spread as much, so you can apply more paint to areas, and in the hope that it will stay a darker tone to create that depth that you're looking for. Okay, it's not about creating detail, it's just about exploring techniques and having just a little bit of fun with it. So, okay, you can see here that that's lovely, that crisp line along the top of the mountain creates an interesting effect. So that mountain's starting to look like it's in front of this particular one. That one there looks like it's in the distance. I actually don't want to touch that because I think that's worked quite well. But I could get a smaller brush and run some water along here. I've lost a bit of detail in here. So what I may do is put just a touch of darkness, and you can just literally drop the pigment into here and let it do its work. Now I've just added a different blue in there. That's fine. Just add a bit something different. I do like that line. Okay. What you can also do is you can cut out little sticky bits and put them on. Like for instance, if you wanted a moon, you can add a little sort of sticky dot, and as you're painting it, it just keeps your page white. So what I haven't done here is I haven't left anything white, but usually you can leave little areas of white to create reflections, especially if you had the moon in here, and I'll do that in another video. Okay. I might wait. I'd like to put a little bit more detail in here, but I don't want to fiddle with it too much. You can also lift some of the pigment like I'm doing here, actually lifting it off because I want some whiter areas. before it actually completely dries. So this is sort of damp, so you can actually add some textures in here, which are quite interesting. Okay, and I'm going to try and do the same down here, but this might be a little bit too late. Oh no. Always have a towel next to you. I've always got one on my lap so that I'll wipe my brush on it. This is what we call working back into, but we generally would do this later on. You can also work back into it using really fine tip pens. Okay, that's sort of pooling there at the moment because there's a bit of a dent. I might just try and spread it out a little bit more while the paper now is starting to dry. So I can use my fingerprint there. Okay, and then you can use a fan brush if you want to create a few reeds, or flick, just flick liberally. Don't be too precious with it. Don't be too contrived. Sometimes I get carried away and just do it too contrived, so it looks like it's not natural. So I can lift some of the pigment and just flick it. And the great thing about watercolour is also that if you make a mistake, you think, oh, I don't want that there. Before it dries, you can use a little bit of tissue or paper towel, pop it in there, see what happens. It's just absorbing some of the excess. Now, if I was to leave that in there, it would probably look better because it will have a lot more texture in it. So now I think that mountain has dried up. I might I'll try and go into it with a brush, see what happens. Yep, so I don't even have to put any pigment on it, and as you can see, it's created that fine line that I was looking for. Great. Then I want to blend that back in, but you don't want to fiddle with it too much. Sometimes you can get carried away fiddling too much. I'm going to stop now because otherwise I'm just going to do too much and then there's too many watermarks. As I can see, there's a little bit of a watermark happening here and I don't want it. I actually want it to blend. I don't mind the line in here, so that's like a bit of a watermark that happened because it actually gives you definition, but I don't necessarily want that same sort of line in the sky.